So, what I've done here, I'm not going to go through the building of this little flow that I've done, but I am going to concentrate on the pop-ups. By pop-ups, I mean things like this, where you click on a dot and you're able to see information about what's behind that dot. And in this particular case, I'm using one of our library data sets, which you have access to, and you could replicate this presentation if you wanted, for the life expectancy for about 50 countries over about 150 years. So it's a popular data set that we use all the time in our trainings. After I've configured the array of data in this data set into a scatter plot that you see here, which shows about 50 different countries. It's a very busy step here because it's showing 50 countries with the life expectancy as it's evolved since the early 1800s till now. This is a step I built from that. And then just so we get a little clearer view of a subset of this, what I did is I put a filter on that, on the data displayed in that step. So now I'm just looking at European countries. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through pop-ups, and I'm going to take you through the options as to the kinds of things you can do when you implement a pop-up. So a pop-up is a swarm attribute. So in order to build a pop-up here, I have to click on the swarm item down in my objects timeline. Perhaps you're already familiar with doing that, I'm not sure. And then the way you define the pop-ups is going to this menu item here called interactions. Okay? So there are various types of pop-ups. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to do a pop-up that you get when you do a select on a button. Okay. And the particular type of pop-up that I'm going to do here is called an overlay pop-up. And the nice thing about these kinds of pop-ups is you can set them so they appear in very predictable places on the screen very easily. So you can set these pop-ups in this particular type of pop-up. You can set it so it appears in the upper left, the center left, the bottom left, the upper right. So there are about 6 places around the screen that you can configure this pop-up to appear in. I'm going to make it appear in the upper left part of my screen. Okay. This list of buttons here, these are the columns in the CSV file that provide the data for this chart. And in my pop-up here, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. I'm going to just put the country, I'm going to put the year, I'm going to put the population and the income in US dollars per capita. The reason I'm choosing these two fields, population and income, is because it gives me an interesting forum to do some configuration of each of these fields. Okay. So a completely optional item that you have in the pop-up, well, I'll tell you what, let me show you how this works first, then I'll come back and fill in the options. So if I'm going to go up to Switzerland here, and I'm going to click on the last occurrence in this particular line chart here, scatter plot, for Switzerland, I see Switzerland 2020, that's obviously the year, I guess. 8.6 million, that's the population, and 57616, that's the income. So maybe that was not totally obvious from looking at that. So I'm going to do a little bit more configuration on my pop-up. Coming back here, I'm going to re-look at the pop-up. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the preface that goes before each of these display of pop-up items. Does not have to be the same as the column name. Like I'm going to shorten population just to pop, and I'm going to shorten income USD per capita. I'm just going to say that's income. Okay. So now when I say OK to this, and now I click the button. Okay, now I get some additional information here. Country, Switzerland, year, population, income. So now what I'm going to talk about is doing some refinements on what's displayed here just to make it a bit more user-friendly, let's say. So I'm coming back here. I'm going to, once again, access my pop-up definition. I'm doing that every time, by the way, just coming back here to the on-select pop-up overlay and clicking the select columns button. Okay, so some of the kinds of things we might want to do for the population field is maybe we want to just round it. We don't need to see millions. Maybe we just want to round it to thousands. And maybe on the precision, we don't want to see fractional income or fractional population. Maybe in my data set here, this was a projected population number. That's why we've got a kind of an odd number of 0.333. Okay. There's a formatting option here that doesn't really apply to population because this is units, but there is a trailing text I can put on it. This is units of persons. Okay, I could certainly do that. For the income, let's see, how do I want to configure that one? You know, I think I'm going to leave that in the whole dollars. I'm not going to round it to the nearest thousand or the million or whatever. The precision, though, I'm going to set that so it's a value of units, okay, without any trailing decimal places. The format, I'm going to put, since this is US dollars, I'm going to put the US dollar sign in front of it. And the trailing, let's see, I will put income, then the trailing I'll put per person. Why not? Also for the income, I think I'm going to, and both for the population and the income, I have an option of whether I include commas in between long numbers. So seeing that each of these might be fairly lengthy, I'm going to do the check boxes here. So I'm going to get commas inserted into the output. So as I'm doing all this, over on the right-hand side of this menu here, what I'm seeing is kind of Flow is making an attempt to show me what it's probably going to look like, okay, as an example. Okay, so I've got all that done. I've got all this configured. Now let's see what happens when I click on Switzerland. Okay, Switzerland, year 2019, population 8,613K persons. Okay, much better than seeing the 8613 XXX that I saw earlier. Income 57,000, 375 per person. So, you know, in using this configuration scheme, I've really been able to come up with a very user-friendly rendition of what the user is going to see when they click dots for this pop-up. Let me pause there just real quick. Do you have any questions yet on this? And please feel free to interrupt me as I'm going through.
So no, not so far.
Okay.
Based off this particular topic, it seems pretty self-explanatory.
Okay. Okay, great. That's excellent. Let me show you another kind of pop-up. This is called an on rollover pop-up. It works pretty much the same way, except instead of the pop-up appearing in the upper left-hand corner, it's when I roll over it, you'll see what happens. So let me turn off the on select pop-up just so I don't get too much interference going as I'm demonstrating this one. So the on roller pop-up, okay, I think I had set this up. I had selected some columns yesterday when I was preparing for this class. So I've selected country, year, and life expectancy. I mean, just to keep it quick here, I'm just going to put the prefaces on, but I'm not going to do any other special configuration. And for life expectancy, I'm just going to say life expect. Okay, so now I've got this rollover pop-up defined. So now the way this works, and you can see already I got a pop-up because I was rolling my cursor from where it was, and I brushed against some of this chart. So the way a rollover pop-up works is whenever you encounter a dot, like here, I'm going to encounter this dot for the Ukraine, the information on that dot pops up. So this is country, Ukraine, population 2020, life expectancy. These types of pop-ups, we call them hover or rollover pop-ups. These are really useful when you don't have your dots too tightly packed and you're not as likely, let's say, to accidentally brush across one. It can be effective in a chart like this too, but sometimes with so many dots available on the chart, it just gets a little distracting sometimes if you got this kind of pop up for a densely dotted chart. Let's put it that way. But for many charts, these are great.
And just to add one quick element in here, since I know recording videos is going to be really important to you. So if you're recording an AR video where you're using your cell phone and recording outwards, the on select text for overlay will show up on the mobile screen, but for any VR experience where you're in a headset, that won't be visible. So I'm just calling that out just to say that the on select 3D text is more often used in that manner. And then rollover text doesn't transfer over. So when we go through recording stuff, this will become more and more relevant. Yeah, so just 2 cents there.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Let's see. So this is all I'm going to say about these kinds of pop-ups. As long as I'm on this menu here, I'm going to return here to my on select pop-up being selected. As long as we're on this particular area of specifying interactions, I'm just going to show you really quickly that we also have a concept of highlighting. So you can enable highlighting in a chart like this. And I won't get into all the ins and outs of it because that's a topic probably for another session. But you can enable it. And what that allows you to do, it allows you to come up to a chart like this, click on a dot. Okay, here I'm highlighting across year, which doesn't really make very good sense on a chart like this. Instead, if I highlight it according to country, now when I click on this dot, I get the United Kingdom line can be highlighted. So this can be used for emphasis. And if you want to do comparison, if I do a shift click here, I get United Kingdom and Sweden. And maybe I could compare, well, those charts look almost identical, which probably is not too surprising. But let's say if I were to highlight the United Kingdom, let's say in Russia, I think I'm going to get 2 different looking curves here. Oops, there's Russia. The way I'm highlighting multiple items here, I'm holding the shift key down. Yeah, so here, if you look at the United Kingdom life expectancy versus Russia, you can see that there's quite a bit of variation in here. So if I were more of a student of European history, I'd probably know exactly why that is. But I don't know. But I just wanted to mention that we do have the capability of highlighting these curves for use in your presentation. At this point, I'm going to turn this over to Sierra, who's going to give us some insights on positioning of pop-ups, and she's going to have additional commentary on AR and VR to follow up. Sierra, you want me to stop sharing my screen?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah, so like Michael had already mentioned, I was going to talk a little bit about XR, but yeah, essentially, let me share screen real quick. Yeah, essentially with pop-ups in XR, you just need to make sure that you're not using on rollover, but instead you're using the on select and something called 3D text. So my dots just went away for some reason. Let me go ahead and refresh.
Yeah, we're very excited about AR and VR. I've been doing group meetings with my team on Facebook work groups already, and
Oh, no way.
yeah, so they have to suffer through looking at an avatar while they're on Zoom.
Oh, I love it. That's awesome. Yeah, we do that too. We're in Horizon Workroom occasionally and trying it out. So yeah, that's great to hear. So does everyone on your team have headsets?
So they're logging into just a Zoom.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But I have a headset. And I'm just trying to adopt more just to open my sphere and eventually get on either Super World or Sandbox and try to meet clients that way.
Wow, I love it. Yeah, that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, that's super cool. So this is definitely something that would look awesome in AR or VR. So the pop-ups would be like a 3D text. And I'll show you, that looks kind of more of what the rollover looks like that Bill was showing. So if I just select city, and then this pop-up kind of appears, randomly in the space. Flow does try and like guess, depending on, where your camera angle is, if you click on it, to show it facing you. So that way things are a little bit easier, but sometimes they're a bit far off the screen. And if you want to do something on a flat screen and have it in a specific place, you can actually control the positioning. So right here, there's an option that says position dynamic. You can control how far away it is from the camera. So if I click again, I can, make it a little bit closer, and it'll be a little bit closer there. But I can click on something called fixed and actually choose the position where this shows up. So right now it's at 0, 0, 0, and that's kind of somewhere in the globe. So if we bring it all the way to the right, you'll see it start to scoot over there. Let me type in a bigger number, maybe something like 2, and then it's way over there. So let me do 1.2, something like that. All right, so there it is. It's really small. We can make it a little bit bigger here. So there's a lot of customization options as far as pop-ups go to kind of make sure that they're ending up where your user wants to see them at. So that's pretty much it as far as positioning. I wanted to take a look at this data that you sent me and see if we could just throw it in there really quick, just so you could see an overall, like, how does this go from, getting your data to putting it into Flow, and how it can be pretty quick. So this was the data I was going to grab, but I'm not sure. We typically take files in a CSV format. So let me see if I can try and copy this into a CSV by any chance. If not, I could show you the idea of, how you would do that. So let me go ahead, and I'm just going to open Excel really quick. So this is very ad hoc, so we'll try and see if we can get this working, but
I love it. Building it live.
yeah. So how we'll do that, I don't know if you can see you see Excel on my screen right now, or just
Just your Chrome browser.
let me restart this share so that way you can see my whole desktop. All right, is that better?
Yep.
Okay. So yeah, so we got this in here. We'll just add some headers. So year, and I believe lowest rate, highest rate, and average. All right. Lowest, highest, average. And then I'm just going to save that as a CSV. All right. And then if we go back into Flow, what I'll do is I will create a new flow, and then right here where it says data source, I'll hit select, and then go ahead and choose that file that we just saved. And then it just kind of randomly throws your dots. And so each dot is a row here in Flow. And I'm going to change this chart type instead of random to be a scatter plot. And for the width axis, I'll select year. And then for the height axis, I'll select average, for example. And so we already see these dots kind of start to take shape. There's different settings you can play with as far as, the size of the chart, making a little bit wider, and things like that. I'll go ahead and make a connection line. So that way, these dots start to connect. So throw that data into Flow, and you can see it's pretty quick. There's a few other settings, lots of other settings, I should say, but you can play with color. You can make color kind of associated with the average price, so we can make it more red as the prices or as the interest rate is higher, and green as the interest rate is lower. We can change the range. So right now we're kind of starting at whatever the minimum in the data set is, but we can change that to 0, kind of change that baseline a little bit. And you can check out how that looks. So yeah, I mean, this is very quick, a little line chart in here, but I thought I'd give it a try just so that way you could see, some of your own data, what that would look like. Yeah, any questions around that?
Yeah, that's excellent. It's actually what we were looking for. I can see myself doing, data points between neighborhoods and seeing how prices have increased over the last 5 years, and showing clients who are, open to neighborhoods, but don't really know historically where the most value has been coming back. So I could see it more of a, 3D or 4D view, where it's showing clients, all right, cool. Over the last 5 years, this area has had the highest growth based off of the starting price point, which is data we can get out of our MLS.
Yeah, it'd be really cool to, like, on a map, to have just the whole map view, and then have little small line charts to show how that price has changed over time.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now you mentioned something about VR. How would you apply this in a VR setting or AR?
So that's something that Flow actually handles really well, and we don't make it very difficult for the user. But if you just type in this link on the browser in headset, so it'll just take you right to the Flow, and any users that you have can just jump right in. And then the same thing for AR, depending on what type of phone you have. If you have an Android phone, just in the browser you can type in the link, and there'll be a little button that says enter AR mode. And then on the iPhone, iPhones don't currently support AR. So we have, but we use an app called WebXR. It's by Mozilla, and that'll allow you to enter AR mode as well from the iPhone.
And that is
Cool.
coming to Safari here soon. The one thing I'll quickly add to that is that the ability to create a live meeting can be done by hitting this meet button. And the only reason I say that is that after you do that, the number that you get here, it basically creates a meeting number. And so for someone to just go to a.flow.gl, they can enter that number, or if they have a cell phone, they can just scan that QR code. So if you're literally out of the house, they're just standing next to you, they could scan it and go through the same data. So just some other means of getting in, but one of the powerful things about being just a website is that it's just a link, just like everyone's used to. So it should be pretty easy to get people in. And I just wanted to show one other show here of using rollover text. And so what I'm doing here is I actually have 3 different swarms on top of each other, next to each other. And so I have a rollover text that is going to a fixed location. And then I have some text next to it that is like the label. And so this was sort of an experiment to, in many ways, sort of try to, add some legibility and using the fixed location in a more effective way. Because one thing you'll run into is if you have more than one swarm, and the text will obfuscate one another, as you need to offset them just a little bit. So just one thought that I thought this kind of works pretty well in terms of an interface to easily read and make it sort of look like a dashboard almost. So you could imagine something of the same manner. But I do think that your story could be really compelling in the sense that you could have stories that are more macro oriented, of like, here's the overall market and where it's going, historical interest rates and this point in time compared to 50 years ago, et cetera. And the micro of, okay, but now even in just the Boston region, there's lots of differences in terms of neighborhoods and all sorts of stuff there. So I love that ability to see the big picture and then drill super local. So sorry to interrupt, but just 2 more cents there, and back to Sierra.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. I think it's great because, you know, you can show housing supply and housing supply trends. You can do it month over month or decade over decade and show clients why there is such a housing crisis in Boston right now.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, I see.
With that interest rate, right? How do you make it a 3D chart like you shown previously?
Oh, like the average. You could kind of show if we pivoted the data a little bit and changed the format, you could have the each line be on the depth axis. So show, average compared to highest compared to lowest. So that way those 3 charts have a little bit of depth from each other. I think that would be cool. So that would essentially require, if I just share screen again and pull up that data set. So right now it's formatted in a way that each here, lowest is a column, highest average. But what you could do is have a new column that is just like category. And so it would tell you, year 2019. And so you'd have 3 years of 2019. And then it would say either lowest, highest, or average, and then combine all those numbers into one column. So if that makes sense. So you could have, 2019 lowest, and then your 3.63 as a row, and then another row that says 2019 highest 5.34. And then you could take that category column and then throw it onto the depth axis. So then you'd have, for your depth axis, you'd have from your columns, you'd choose, category, and then it would throw those 3 out into separate lines, if that makes sense.
So in this sense, the 3D-ness comes from adding that depth dimension to add in other series of lines. However, if you wanted to add a different attribute to see how that impacts it, that's very applicable too. I think one thing that we've definitely found is that for all these graphs that have the 3D nature, that the most important thing is to introduce sort of one axis at a time, and that sometimes the real power is not really necessarily just the 3D-ness, but really how can I tell this story in a very dynamic way that allows you to understand each new axis as I introduce it. So I just try to point that out as well. But great summary, Sierra, in terms of how to make it 3D.
Yeah, that concept Sierra was referring to is called unpivoting the data. And it's quite common in analytical tools such as Tableau and the like. And you can find a lot of information on the internet for it. Excel has an automated way of doing it. We have, I think we have an article on our help center as to how to unpivot. So that's the term, and it's quite easy to do. And you have tools that'll help you to do that.
Okay, that's awesome. Really interested in exploring that. Could you do the same thing if you just remove 2 of the columns?
What do you mean? Like if you remove 2 of them?
If you move the average and the high, and if you just wanted to see, very basic, what's the average of the last 15 years, the interest rate, instead of the average and the high, you just did the first column.
Like
The 2, so you just introduced 2 axes, so it's just the year and the interest rate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's basically what this chart is here. So this is just the average interest rate over time.
Oh, that's right, because you put out the data as just the average. You didn't use all. You didn't introduce the other 2.
You could choose something actually that's kind of cool I can show you is in our interactions, something called column pull down. For the height axis, we can add that. So that way we can add in highest, average, and lowest. So that way your users can click on this and actually change it and see, okay, this is what highest looks like, this is what lowest looks like, and then this is what average looks like. So they can go in between as well.
Okay.
And so what Sierra was describing is the process of getting those all onto one graph at the same time. So you see all 3 together as opposed to needing to click. So yeah, that's a good way to show that.
So this is a very rich tool. It's got lots of capabilities, as Sierra has shown us here. Let's see. Do you have any other questions, James and Michael?
Not at the moment. I think what we need to do is just spend some more time in it. And I think once we have a couple of hours where we can actually dive deeper into it and use this use case that Sierra did, next week we'll be more prepared.
Yeah, this is so great. It's been amazing every week. It's such a, I'd say every session seems so different. You know, between Wednesday and Friday, we just get such a different group of people, and I really love it. So it's cool to meet another Boston person, and I love that you're focused on the video aspect. And when you get to there, you know, I'll definitely help out as much as I can to make sure you're successful there. But you know, you're thinking of it exactly right. It's how do I communicate? And to your case, it's your customers and clients. And you know, we've seen the impact on our own side for our own content that we're putting out there and just seeing it go crazy. And very excited to see that happen for you too.
Yeah. Do you guys have like a Discord or a Tumblr or like a Facebook group for clients?
We do not. We have our community forum, which we just opened, and that is located. So this is our help center, by the way. So you can always get to this by going to documentation. And then up here, you'll see all sorts of guides, etc. In addition, you also see this community forum. We don't have a crazy amount yet, but we'll keep adding more and more topics into here. But if you have any questions or things, we're just creating sort of general forum for now. Yeah, once we get to more critical mass, we might look into, we haven't figured out which one, but we'll do a vote and figure out which one we want to use for community stuff. But you know, in the meantime, we try not to add too many different communication platforms. Try to keep it all pretty centered here.
Cool. Yeah, I like the grass because then, you know, eventually I can start doing like a TikTok and just show something in like 30 seconds, you know, because nobody wants to look at data point, like nobody wants to look at a spreadsheet, you know.
Yep, I agree. It's yeah, agreed. All right.
Cool. This has been very helpful. Thank you so much for your time, guys.
Yeah, it's been very nice meeting you, and thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
You guys.
Bye, Michael. Bye, James.
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thanks a lot.